Evening, everybody. I hope you're well and kind of staying safe and not going to stir crazy in this second lockdown period. Welcome to the Competitor's Ultimate Guide to Mindfulness with guest speakers John Pratt and Sidd Sampla from iZone Driver Performance. My name's Katie Baldwin. I'm from Motorsport UK, and I'm primarily here to monitor the Q&A and field any questions at the end for John and Sidd. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping points to note. Please be aware that the webinar is being recorded. It will be available afterwards on the Motorsport UK website. So if you do miss anything, you can revisit the session, and that will be available from tomorrow afternoon. As mentioned, there's a Q&A at the end. So there's a Q&A function, chat box at the bottom, which you should be able to see. If you'd like to ask any questions, please post them on here. And they'll either be answered naturally throughout the presentation or when Sidd pauses at the end to take questions. So without further ado, I'll hand over to John and Sidd. Enjoy the session, and I'll see you again at the end.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Katie. Tonight's talk is going to be a follow-on from the talk I gave last month on performing under pressure. Now, for those of you that didn't take part in that, you can actually find notes on the talk I gave on the Motorsport UK website under Ultimate Guides. And at the end of that talk, we concluded by talking about the need to train our minds to be mentally resilient. And this is what that Sidd is going to be taking over, and we'll be talking about mindfulness. So building mental resilience is all about being able to cope with discomfort. Pressure, especially pressure on our ego, is extremely uncomfortable, and human nature is to escape discomfort as quickly as possible. And I finished my talk last time by going through a scenario that probably will be familiar to a lot of you drivers. And so I just want to, as a way of kicking this off, is to run through this again. So we want to imagine a situation where you've been driving really well, let's say in testing, when the driving is flowing, and you generally experience the following. You're not thinking about how to drive, you're just driving. The process unfolds in front of you, almost like corner by corner by corner. You're not trying. It's easy and enjoyable, and critically, you're performing well. So I'm sure many of you have experienced that when you're driving. It doesn't happen all of the time, but we have those magic moments where it just seems to be happening on autopilot on its own. But what I want you to do now, as we're talking about pressure, is to imagine a situation where you look in your mirrors and you see another car catching you. Just to make it even more uncomfortable, just imagine that's your teammate. And it's at this point we meet what we call the crossroads of choice. Choice one is you consciously choose to focus on the next corner and keep your focus on the current task in hand, which is just driving, making every apex. Keeping your concentration 100% on executing your skill in each corner. You effectively choose to stay where you are and accept what is happening at that moment. Okay? And the result will be you will continue to perform at the same level. It may not be at this moment as quick as your teammate, but we all know that we're not always going to be quickest all of the time. And we know that when we go back to the pits and we check the data, we can find out what our teammate was doing, possibly make an improvement. Okay? So that's choice one. Choice two is you immediately think of the consequence of being slow. We could say that maybe your ego is triggered by this. And the thoughts that you're going to have is, my teammate's going to be really happy. Everyone will know it's probably on TSL. How will I explain this on social media? I've told everybody how quick I am. What my friends and family are going to think? And, how am I going to explain this to people? These thoughts, and this all happens very, very quickly, trigger your emotions, which in turn trigger your flight or fight instinct. And importantly, this will result in you wanting to escape that feeling as quickly as possible. And at this point, when emotion is involved, logic has very little chance. And they do say that emotion is 10 times more powerful than logic. And you now, unconsciously, and we can almost say on autopilot, you start to think how you can drive faster or quicker. You look at ways to cheat time, as I would call it. You want a quick way out. And this results in us starting to overdrive. And pretty much the first thing you're likely to do, certainly I used to do when I was driving, is trying to make time up on braking. So we'd brake later, or you might choose to carry more speed, or pick up the throttle early, or a combination of all of these things. And pretty soon, you're going to experience a drop in performance as a result. And you'll notice it's not enjoyable, and you're going to get frustrated. And as a result of that frustration, you experience a further drop in performance. Okay. So critically, how could you have stopped this from happening? Well, it's quite simple. You have to remember where this all started. And it was when we reached that crossroads of choice, the thought that your teammate was catching you. Okay. So if you could have caught that thought and just accepted it as a thought, as part of what happens, and redirected the mind immediately to the task in hand, which is executing the next corner in exactly the same way as I have done for the previous half dozen laps, and then keep it there, none of this would have happened. Okay. And this is where mindfulness training will come in and help us understand, when we meet that crossroads of choice, how we actually have a choice of where we put our mind. So I'm going to hand you over to Sidd.
Perfect, brilliant. Thank you, John, for that great introduction and that great scenario, which we will be keep recapping, and we'll be keep exploring that particular scenario about the crossroads of choices and exploring where does mindfulness fit into all of this. So just to introduce mindfulness for the whole group, firstly, I just want to say that as kind of this is just a really brief introduction to mindfulness, not to worry too much if we don't cover all the key concepts, or if we don't go into that much depth into some of the concepts around mindfulness. Essentially, this session is to really just give you a brief overview of how mindfulness can be useful and utilized in your driving and performance. So I just want to start off introducing mindfulness with the picture that you could hopefully see right in front of you. And I just want you to take in and think about the picture that you're seeing right now, and just think about what are the differences in the picture that you can see between the man or the woman and the dog. What are the key differences in what's going on for them? And think about the surroundings that they are in, and think about the cloud. The cloud is representing their thoughts and what's going on in their mind. So I just want you to think about what's happening in this picture. And then look at the words, one, mindful, and the other is mindful. Is there a difference? So essentially, if you can see this picture, what mindfulness actually is, it's with being in the present moment and experiencing what is happening in the present moment. So you can see in the picture, the dog and the man and woman is outside in nature. And think about who's in the present moment here, or who's thinking about the future or the past. So when we look and talk about mindfulness, It's paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, in the here and now. So if you're racing if you're kind of competing in a track, it's where's your mind at? Is it on the next corner? Is it on what you're doing at the task at hand? Or are we thinking about our teammates? Are we thinking about what if somebody overtakes us? Okay, so that essentially mindfulness is paying attention and deliberately bringing our focus into the here and now. And when we look at mindfulness, it's understanding that mindfulness isn't about getting rid of thoughts or emotions. It's not neglecting thoughts or emotions. It's not that there's only one type of mindfulness or exercise that you need to follow. There's lots of different exercises of mindfulness, which we'll explore a bit further on. There's no quick fix or quick escape around mindfulness. It's about noticing your experiences, and that comes with training and developing your skills. When we look at mindfulness here, it's not about being spiritual or religious. It's using a mindfulness technique and tool as a real to help us with our attention and our focus and concentration. So this is simply the simple version of what mindfulness is. It's just paying attention into what I need to do in the here and now. And there's some really key and really important concepts around mindfulness. When we talk about mindfulness, they involve various things. And we'll be exploring some of these concepts during this presentation. And we'll be connecting the scenario that John mentioned about the crossroads of choices in between each concept. So here we've got acceptance, we've got observing and noticing, we've got being compassionate and non-judgmental. And we'll be exploring our thoughts, feelings, emotions, and body sensations. And kind of as John mentioned, here at iZone, we do take a mindfulness and acceptance-based approach in supporting all our drivers in their journey to become the best that they can be. So if we kind of explore a bit further some of these concepts. So acceptance is pretty much kind of it's accepting that there is an alternative to our way of thinking. Things don't always need to be positive or negative. It's accepting things are happening as it is. So I've got a picture here to show you of what's a great example around acceptance. So I just want to spend a few moments just reading this particular picture, because essentially this is what we mean by acceptance. And here it involves experiencing what is happening without trying to predict or change experience. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up or giving in. It's just changing our perspective and view of our experience. So without getting caught up in judgment and lots of flooded with thoughts and what if, and all these kind of unhelpful thinking, all we're really doing is paying attention to what the present moment is. So you think about our example here, where the driver is kind of noticed that their teammate is catching up to them. When we look at acceptance, we're not getting caught up in the what ifs or the consequences or focusing on them and their driving. We're really just accepting that, yes, there is my teammate is driving faster, but then we shift our focus back onto ourselves and our experience. So here, acceptance is a really important tool when it comes to mindfulness. And we'll be exploring further around kind of how acceptance is connected to the other concepts. So if you think about kind of your driving experience, so as motorsport drivers, in your journey to where you are right now, you have faced an emotional roller coaster through your journey, a mixture of range of feelings and thoughts. Some feelings and thoughts have probably been really comfortable and really pleasurable. Some feelings and thoughts have probably been really tough and really uncomfortable. There's been setbacks in your journey. There's been things have gone wrong in your journey, whether there's been crashes or somebody's crashed into you, or you've taken the wrong turn, or you oversteered. It's understanding in our journey that there will be discomfort and there will be uncomfortable emotions. So part of acceptance really is understanding as a driver competing at a high level that it will come with uncomfortability and discomfort. So here, part of acceptance is utilizing discomfort and sitting with discomfort. And that's a really important part of mindfulness. So here we're trying to change our relationship with your thoughts, feelings, and judgments. So moving on to kind of another really important concept within mindfulness, and what kind of John talked about earlier, it's our emotions and feelings play a huge part in our performance and our decision making and our driving. So here, by acceptance, what we're looking at here is allowing you guys, drivers, to really make space for all your feelings and sensations, and not pushing a feeling that might be negative or uncomfortable aside. So here we're looking at changing our feeling, changing our relationship around our feelings and emotions, and really embracing them as part of our experience. So an example of how we might use mindfulness here, and when we're understanding our feelings, it's understanding, where do our feelings come from? What is the information our feelings are giving us? So when we're feeling under pressure, we might feel anxious, we might feel overwhelmed, we might feel discomfort. Where is this coming from? So going back to the scenario, it's coming from the sense of my teammate is catching me up, might overtake me. I might not be good enough. I might not be able to defend my lead. And these feelings are coming out from the fight or flight element. So if we look at kind of feelings here, part of acceptance and mindfulness is trying not to also get caught up in our feelings and create some space between what we feel and what's happening for us. So here, as you can see in some of the sentences, there's understanding as kind of human beings, as drivers, that you're not your feelings. So what you feel is not necessarily everything who you are. So we need to create some emotional, some crucial space between that. And so how we can do that is add labels. So instead of saying I am anxious, we could say I'm feeling anxious. So we're creating a really important space from how we're feeling, but also we're not consumed by that anxiety or that worry or that stress. So again, we need to reevaluate our understanding around emotions. We're not here to ignore them or push them to a side. We understand they're really important to us in our journey, but let's take a bit more of a mindful and accepting strategy towards emotions. Okay, so this is a really crucial part of mindfulness. And I really want you to think about the scenario here where John kind of was talking about, when you're kind of doing really, really well in testing, you're performing really well, you feel really good, you're in the flow, you're in the element. And then when you've kind of actually in competition, you feel so far it's going really well, and then suddenly you spot your teammate right behind you, catching up to you, and then you're starting to get flooded with lots of different thoughts and feelings. Okay, so I want you to keep that scenario in your head while I'm going to talk through this non-judgmental element. Okay, so essentially non-judgmental means we're not necessarily adding on a good or bad experience or thought to a particular life experience. So all we're doing here, non-judgmental here, means we're experiencing an event. So whether this is racing, where we're going around the track, it's going really well, we're feeling really good. And all we're doing here with our thoughts is just being present to what's happening right now, being present to the task at hand. So whether that's focusing on the next turn, focusing on just what should you really be doing while you're kind of competing. So essentially here, we're not adding any judgment to it, whether it's a bad judgment or a good judgment. We're just letting it flow and letting it naturally happen. Okay. However, as we all know, with our minds, our mind is always judging. It's a wondering, judging machine. Everything we do and everything we experience, we always judge and we always kind of filter. and try and deal with that. We judge things that are bad, we judge things that are good, and we judge things that might be in between. We do this all the time. You might be listening in right now, and you might be judging this experience in a helpful and unhelpful way. We naturally judge, because we want to put things into a box. We want to make sense of it. Okay. There's nothing necessarily wrong with these judgments, because it's the nature of the mind to judge. Sometimes judgments can be quite helpful because it can help us to lead to understand things, and give us some purpose. But think about judgments. If you're judging experiences all the time, think about the day that you might have had today, the different things you've done today, from waking up, probably being at school or work, then maybe doing some simulated training, then being at home with family, and then maybe being here. That's filled with hundreds and hundreds of experiences today. And again, that might come with hundreds and hundreds with different judgments and thoughts today, good, bad, or neutral. That can be really taxing on your mind. It can be really full on for your mind to keep doing that all the time. And when we start judging things as good and bad, we're going to end up avoiding and ignoring some experiences that might be bad, or some experiences that might not have gone well. So really what we want to do here when we look at mindfulness is, can we try and not always label everything? Can we try and accept things for what they are? So if we look back at the scenario where we see our teammate getting faster and coming up to us, we might have these thoughts around, I'm not good enough, they're going to take me over, I might not do as well in this race, I need to drive faster, I need to steer more, I need to be better. And all these flooded thoughts and judgments are not going to really help your decision making. I'm not going to really help you be in the present. You're going to be so caught up with what you're going to be doing in the future, or what's happened in the past. So where's your focus here? Is it going to be helpful for your driving performance right now? Okay. So as we're kind of talking about these different concepts, don't worry too much, because we're going to be exploring some exercises that can help us navigate some of these concepts for us to kind of upskill ourselves. Okay. So linking with non-judgmental thoughts, I thought I'll introduce a nice slide here, which we can just discuss briefly what thoughts are, what's our relationship with thoughts, what kind of thoughts could crop up or pop up when we are in different scenarios. Okay, so I just want you to just have a look at this particular picture here and just think about what's happening in this picture. What's happening with the man's presence here? Where's his mind at here? Is it in a present experience, or is it somewhere else? And while you're thinking about that, try and relate this to your experience. How often are you in your past or in your future, or overwhelmed with lots of different thoughts about what's going on? Okay, so if you can bring back to that scenario again and think about if you've been in a situation like that, when you've been competing and you've been racing and you're getting distracted by your teammate or an opposition driver, or you get distracted by something that's already happened that might have been a setback. What kind of thoughts are flooded in your mind when you're racing and competing? What kind of things are happening in your head? What kind of judgments are going on in your mind? Are you latched on with one thought that's kind of hooked onto you? Or have you got lots of different thoughts going on at the same time? Okay. So while we're thinking and have been reflecting on our own experiences, part of mindfulness here is really understanding that your thoughts are not the enemy. Your thoughts are not good or not bad or negative and positive. Your thoughts can be helpful or unhelpful, but your thoughts here are not the enemy, or your thoughts are not necessarily the problem here. It's we using mindfulness to try and unlatch from that particular thought, and let them come in and out of your mind, as if the cloud is passing through the sky. It's understanding that your thoughts are just temporary, they're not permanent. And just because you're thinking about something doesn't necessarily mean it's real or it's a fact. Okay. Your thoughts will come and will go. And part of kind of our thoughts is having an acceptance approach about them, accepting that that's a thought I'm having, but that's okay. It's going to go. And part of our wondering mind and our judging mind, it's understanding that our mind can be easily triggered by moments of really intense pressure, such as in that scenario of noticing the faster car right behind you. I need to do better. I need to go faster. And what research tells us is we have over 6,000 thoughts per day. And that's a lot of thoughts to process and deal with. So part of acceptance is understanding we don't need to deal with each thought. We don't need to hook ourselves onto a thought or read a thought. We can just let them come and let them go. And that's okay. So how do we let go of the thought of I'm not good enough, or my teammates catch me up, I need to do better, I need to drive faster? Okay, these are some of the things we're going to be exploring just further down the line. Okay, so we've got a really kind of a good example here that I want to kind of share with you all about how we can relook at our thoughts and how we can change our relationship with our thoughts, from being one where thoughts are facts, from where we have to hook ourselves onto thoughts, and where thoughts are positive and negative. Okay, here we're going to try and change our relationship to our thoughts. So as you can see the picture there, it's a beach ball. So I'm going to use a metaphor to try and help you to see things a little bit differently and try and understand thoughts in a different kind of way. So if we try to stop our thoughts from happening, if we try and block them, or try and repeat to ourselves, I'm not going to think this way, it's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. Okay, how difficult is that going to be? Try and hold the beach ball underwater while it's pumped up. It's going to keep popping up all the time. The harder we try and make it sink in water, it's going to keep popping up all the time, no matter how hard we try and make it sink. So the idea here is, rather than stopping a thought or blocking a thought out, it's we can, just like the beach ball, just allow our thoughts to flow around us. Okay, not necessarily latching onto us or intruding us, but just let the thought be. Just let the beach ball float around in the sea rather than sinking it in. It's going to be difficult to do. And we can do this by, first, we need to notice our thoughts. Notice what our thoughts are. Where they're coming from, what's being triggered by our thoughts. So in that scenario, what's being triggered for us is looking behind and seeing the driver being faster than us. And then suddenly we've got these emotions coming and these thoughts coming. And suddenly we're overwhelmed with lots of thinking, and we're distracted from the task at hand. So what I'm going to get you guys all to do, we're going to have a really kind of spend a couple of minutes just having an exercise here, where I'm going to get you guys to just do some thought reflecting here. Okay. So what I'm going to ask you all to do is just get yourself into a comfortable position where you can sit. Okay, you can either sit in a chair, or if you're standing, or if you're lying down, whatever it might be, just get yourself into a comfortable position where you can begin this particular exercise. So what I would like you to do is I'm going to begin to ask you all to close your eyes. I'm going to count from 3, and when I do, I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes. Okay. So 3, 2, and 1. I just want you to begin just to close your eyes. Okay. And just take a deep breath in through your nose, and gently take a deep breath out through your mouth. And again, just take another deep breath in and a deep breath out. And just really fill your body with air and oxygen, and gently release this air out. Just really get your body into a nice rhythmic breathing system now. So the exercise we're going to be doing now is going to guide you through this particular exercise, and it's okay. We're going to just try this exercise out. Okay, if it becomes difficult, that's fine as well. So here we're going to look at the difference between thinking versus observing. Okay, so here we're going to just simply notice what your mind is doing. So I want you to just stay on the lookout for any thoughts or for any images that might pop into your head right now. And I want you to notice as if you're a photographer, as if you're in the wild and you're a photographer and you're waiting for an animal to appear. If no thoughts or images appear, just keep watching, just keep noticing. Something will appear. And notice where your thoughts seem to be located. So where is it coming from, your thoughts? Is it from this session? Is it from something that's happened earlier on? Is it something that's happened a week ago? Where is the direction of that thought? Is it in the front of you? Is it in the back of you? Is it behind you? Is it inside? Or is it above you? Notice that one part of you is thinking and the other part of you is observing that thinking. So there's 2 parts of you here. One of you is thinking about the thought and one of you is observing what the thought is. And this is what we're doing when we're noticing our thoughts and paying attention to our thoughts, and removing some judgments around our thoughts and letting these thoughts go, come and go. Okay, I'm going to count from 3, 2, and 1. And I just want you to just gently open your eyes and just remind yourself where you are right now. So you're in your room and you're watching and listening to a mindfulness session with me right now. Okay, again, if that's a first time for some of you guys that might have done it, it might seem a little bit weird, or it might have seemed a little bit uncomfortable, but that's okay. This is part of the mindfulness exercises, and it's okay if you're feeling a little bit out of sync as well. But hopefully that gave you an example of how we can notice our thoughts and how we can become an observer with our thoughts without actually getting really attached to our thoughts. Okay. So moving on then, so looking at our thoughts and looking at judgments and looking at having a thought that is really hooked in our mind. So the element of our teammate is catching us up, it's hooking us, it's I need to do better, I need to go faster, and then suddenly I'm oversteering, I'm over driving, it doesn't feel natural. Suddenly I'm losing my focus and my attention here. It's shifting to the person, not myself. Okay. So part of mindfulness, one of the techniques we can use is diffusing ourselves from that thought. Okay. And if you look at this picture here, one of the things what we mean by diffusing, if you think about a bomb, or if you think about a detonation or explosion, what we can do here is before it goes off is we can work out how we can diffuse that explosion going off. So what we need to do first is take notice of what's happening to us right now, what's happening to our thoughts and emotions. They're getting really built up. I'm driving, but they're getting built up. All I'm doing is focusing on the other driver. I'm getting muddled in my thoughts. I can't focus on the next drive, on the next turn. I'm just really caught up in what's already happened. The fight or flight situation has kicked in. I'm struggling to make a rational decision here. So here, part of diffusion, we're looking at those thoughts from an observer. We're noticing those thoughts from an observer perspective, rather than being caught up and embracing them as if there's something real, or we need to do something about. We're seeing these thoughts as they are. So we're creating some distance and some space away from these thoughts. And part of diffusion is to really help us separate ourselves from that particular thought. And we'll be exploring an exercise around diffusion and around separation. Okay, but this is a really important concept within mindfulness. Trying to understand that we're not our thoughts, and we're not necessarily our feelings. That there isn't a separation from that, and we can do this by using words like "I'm having a thought of," or "I'm having a feeling of." And that really creates a division and a separation between who I am, or compared to this is a thought I'm having, or this is the feeling I'm feeling. Okay. So that kind of brings us, that's some of the key theory or some of the key concepts around mindfulness. And hopefully that's given you some kind of understanding around what mindfulness is and mindfulness isn't. And hopefully it's given you guys some understanding of where some of these concepts can really help when it comes to performance, when it comes to decision making and pressure, and when it comes to overthinking and being caught up in the space of what's happened in the past or the future. So what we're going to be doing now is I'm going to be guiding you through a variety of different mindfulness exercises. And essentially these exercises it's to really help you bring yourself into the present moment and experience what is happening right now. And I'll explain once we've done these exercises of how we can use these exercises when it comes to situations like when you're performing under pressure, or when you're having the crossroads of choices, where you're suddenly not focusing on the task at hand and you're caught up in what's happened already. Okay. So what we're going to get you to do, it's again, I'm going to ask you all just to get into a comfortable position where you can sit, or where you're able to kind of sit. And before we start, just check in with how you're feeling right now, with where your energy levels are, where your attention and focus is right now. Okay, because I'm aware it is the evening. You might have had a long day at school, at work. and your tension window might be smaller than it probably used to be or is. So if you need to kind of stretch or move your body around, feel free to do so before we start. Okay, and again, for these exercises, if you've not done these before, that's okay, and that's fine. There's no right or wrong way of doing these. All I will kind of encourage is if you can try and experience these exercises if you can, and just give it a go. And then yeah, we can talk about kind of some of these concepts in relation to how you might utilize them when it comes to motor racing. Okay, so the first exercise is pretty kind of, it's a really nice and simple kind of introduction to mindfulness, and it's a really kind of a good exercise of how we can bring you into the present moment with what you're doing right now. Okay, so kind of this particular exercise, we can utilize our sensations or anchor ourselves into the here and now. So what I'm going to ask you all to do is we're going to use our senses for this exercise. So we can use our sight, our smell, our taste, our hearing, and our touch for this exercise. Okay, so hopefully you've got some space around for you to do this. And in this exercise, all you're gonna do is just think about some of the answers or some of the notice and observation points for this exercise. Okay. So what we'd like you to do as we're beginning, I want you to observe and notice in the room that you might be in right now, 5 different items or objects in your room that you can see right now. And all you need to do is just count the 5 objects in your head. You could label them, whatever they might be, and just look around in the room that you're in right now. And just notice 5 different things you can see. Okay, next, I would like you to notice 4 different things that you can feel in your room. So here we're looking at a variety of different textures and comfort that you might feel. So here you may wish to get up and move around, or anything around you that you can feel. And you've noticed 4 different kind of feelings. It could be different objects or textures. And when you're noticing, you're really shifting your attention to what you're doing right now and taking it in. So what does it feel like? What are the differences in between the different things you're touching? What kind of sensations is that giving you? Okay. And next, I want you to notice 2 things that you can hear in your room right now. This one might be difficult because it might not have any sounds, but try and see if you can really try to focus on 2 different sounds. Okay. And next, I want you to see if you can notice and observe 2 different smells in your room right now. Again, you might find it's just one particular smell that's overriding everything. But see if you can really tune in to something that might be coming out. You can smell something in particular. And lastly, I want you to pay attention and observe something that you can taste right now. So this could be, all you're doing here is just tasting in your mouth. So it could be something you've eaten, something you drunk. There might not be any taste in your mouth. Just try and pay attention if you can taste something, and then just label it. Okay, perfect. So I just want you to think about the exercise that you've just done right now, and have a think and reflect on, one, what was the easiest sense to use for focus and attention? Two, what was the hardest sense to use, or what took a bit more time to figure out and observe? And three, where was your attention and focus in this task? Was it 100% focus attention on what you were doing, or were you distracted? Where was that at for this task? Okay. So our next exercise, we're gonna, instead of using our hands or our eyes or kind of our ears to zone in with mindfulness to bring us into here and now, we're going to use our breath to anchor ourselves into this present moment. And so what I would like you all to do is just begin to gently close your eyes. And as we're closing our eyes, all we're going to be doing is just focusing on our breath. So as we begin, you just have a big deep breath in through your nose and gently hold on to that breath. And when you're ready, just gently release that breath out your mouth. And again, just continue breathing, holding the breath in and gently releasing the breath out. And as you're breathing in and breathing out, I want you to use your senses to feel that breath as it's entering your body and leaving your body. Can you follow the breath as you can see and visualize the breath coming into your nose or mouth and following down your throat and into your chest? Can you follow the breath and it's just escaping out your body? Can you feel your chest pumping and rising and relaxing and collapsing as you're breathing in and breathing out? And all we're doing here is just paying attention and noticing how we're breathing. And as you're breathing, can you feel your heartbeat? Can you feel your stomach expanding and collapsing? What's the temperature like of the air? What's your body like as you're breathing in and breathing out? Okay, so in 3, 2, and 1, I just want you to gently open your eyes. And as we're opening your eyes, you may wish to just look around the room where you are right now, just to bring yourself into the here and now and back into this room of learning and sharing. So now just think about the task that you've done there. So we've used our breath as an anchor to really help us and shift our attention into that particular task. Now I want you to think about how you could use that exercise, or you could use the exercise where you are noticing different things you could count and see, how you could potentially utilize an anchor exercise within that scenario, where you got the crossroads of choices, where you're noticing your teammates catching up to you, getting faster, where the thoughts and feelings have suddenly become overwhelmed and flooded, where you're getting distracted, where you're getting caught up in what they're doing and what the consequences are going to be. How can you utilize a technique where you're anchoring yourself, and a technique where you're diffusing from your thoughts and letting the thoughts come and go and not holding on to them? Okay. So just kind of bringing us to the end here, really, before we have some questions and answers. It's really understanding that mindfulness can be really important, a really helpful additional tool within your toolbox of your journey to performing under pressure, to competing, or to being in situations like the scenario. Mindfulness can be a really additional tool to help you build a relationship around your emotions and your thoughts, or to change your perspective about what thoughts, probably how you dealt with them before or viewed them before. It's understanding that there's lots of different types of mindfulness exercises that can be helpful. It doesn't necessarily need to be the exact one. Mindfulness can really help with really concentrating and bring your shifting your attention into the task at hand of what you need to do. And you're just remembering that if some of you guys might be new to mindfulness, don't worry about getting overwhelmed about trying to remember all these techniques and all these concepts. Just like your racing journey, it doesn't happen overnight. We need to work on it and develop these skills and practice. So just like we go to the gym to build your muscles and get fitter and getting stronger, we also need to train our mind, and we can utilize the mindfulness technique to train our mind and change our perspective of how we view thoughts and feelings, and try and let go and unhook ourselves from attaching ourselves onto a particular thought, and understanding that they are temporary and they're not real or facts. We can let go of them and focus or refocus on the here and now. Okay. Perfect. So firstly, thank you for listening. If you kind of have any questions, please put it into the chat. I'm going to pass you over to Katie now.
Sidd, thank you so much. That was really, really insightful. And it was good to kind of do that along with you. I think mindfulness is a word that's bandied around quite a lot, isn't it? But actually what it really is and how you can apply it to your own context, that's something that takes a little bit more kind of insight. So that was really valuable. So thank you very much. Like Sidd said, if you've got any questions, please pop them in the Q&A. I think we've got one that's popped up already. So it's a question from Andrew. It says, hi Sidd, those exercises were great, but took a little bit of time and concentration. Would you say that they can be used in the few seconds you might get mid-lap, but with practice? Or are there other exercises that can help you snap back into the zone?
Yes, thank you for that question, Andrew. What I would definitely say with these exercises, they're really flexible in different situations, scenarios you wish to use. So we have So one, I would definitely recommend to practice beforehand, because by practicing you get familiar and comfortable with what exercise might work for you, because you might find one exercise might be better for you or might be easier or quickly to navigate. So I know some of the drivers at iZone have used different types of breathing / anchor exercises beforehand. So they might use an anchor technique when they're in the car to bring them back into the here and now. And they might do this by feeling their body sensations in the car, whether they're squeezing the wheel of the car to remember that what they're doing is they're focused on the task at hand, or they might just have a quick couple of seconds on the breath coming in and coming out. But I would definitely recommend, Andrew, is to have a play around with these exercises. There's lots of different exercises that I'm happy to kind of share. But yeah, I'll definitely recommend have a play around, because the idea also in mindfulness is if you do it as well before racing and before competition, you're already setting your mind up as well in the right kind of way. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful for you, Andrew.
I guess it's kind of one of those things that you've got to practice and find out what works for you, just like a warm up or sort of a pre-race routine, that kind of thing, isn't it? It's very individualized. Okay, so we haven't got any other questions. I'll just give them a couple more seconds. If anyone else has got another question, please feel free to pop it in. Yeah, we just got one more popped up here. Okay, so a question from Jamie. How can mindfulness be used to help control nerves and pre-race tension?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Jamie. So one, it's when we were talking about mindfulness at the start, we talked about acceptance, didn't we? So part of acceptance here is understanding that part of our journey, or part of competing and dealing with pressure, we're going to have uncomfortable thoughts, uncomfortable feelings such as nervousness or anxiety. And it's really looking at our relationship with anxiety and nerves, because often it can be quite helpful. Feeling nervousness, it's really getting our body and our mind prepared for the task at hand. So part of acceptance or mindfulness here is we could do some breathing techniques, so we could do some anchor techniques just to kind of help kind of notice those particular feelings. But part of mindfulness is really not kind of ignoring that feeling or neglecting that feeling. It's really embracing kind of the purpose of that. It's giving us a signal, and often this is a really important one. So we can use mindfulness to help really look at some of those emotions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sidd. I'll just double check if any other questions have come up just while you've been talking there. Okay, no other questions. So I guess if anyone does have any questions off the back of this, you can email them into webinars@motorsportuk.org, and we'll happily pick those up after the session if you kind of come away from it think of something that you wish you'd asked at the time. So again, this session has been recorded. It will be available. So if you'd like to review it and go back to it at another time, then that will be available on the Motorsport UK website. I think that kind of brings us to the end. So thank you very much for attending. We hope you found it useful and can start to apply some of those to your own performances. If you enjoyed the session and would like to see more from iZone and our other guest speakers, you can head to the Motorsport UK website to sign up. We have got a follow-up session, which is Performing Under Pressure Part 2. So you can check out when that's happening via the Motorsport UK website. Thanks again and enjoy the rest of your evening. Like I say, any other questions, please do feel free to send them in. Take care all. Thank you and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.